we'll take a look at the board state here really quickly. Maybe Joe might be working his way in control of this game. He's got a Blind Obedience out there. Detention's fair that took care of looks like a Colonian Tusker. You do see the aforementioned Brush Strider on the table. Looks like a Duneblade's targeting a Boon Satyr here. We'll see how that's going to work out. Lossett at 15, Richard at 24. Lossett, number 8 on our leaderboard, traveled out here because he realizes this is a huge opportunity for him to gain some points this weekend.
Yeah, so see, it looks like a Doomblade there. Brush Strider is going to go ahead and hit Lossett. So far, he's been able to keep his life total pretty healthy here, thanks to Blind Obedience, and what looks to be a parade of kill spells.
Yeah.
But one of the questions is what follow-up he has. And it looks like right now he has a Jace in his hand, which that should be pretty good. It's not, it's not Sphinx's Revelation, but it's one step closer to Sphinx's Revelation.
See Dryad Militant hit the battlefield there after the Doomblade took care of the Boon Satyr. So there's a Brush Strider and a Militant out there for Richard. It looks like he has a Slaughterhorn in his hand. He's trying to deploy his threats in such a way that he does not get ruined by Supreme Verdict. Here is Jace plus an Extort from the Blind Obedience. So that elevator might be moving up on the Architect of Thought in just a moment.
Yeah, with those two creatures in play, a Jace plus is pretty good. Joe is really just gaining life. Jace in this matchup is probably just a big life gainer. Now, of note where, this is kind of, he's playing the same strategy here that you play, against a mono red deck. The scarier part about when you play against mono green is that mono green usually can overrun life gain if you give it enough time, whereas mono red is just very cold, something like life gain.
Yeah.
Joe does eventually have to sweep these creatures. Robert will deal progressively more damage.
One of the things I actually like about this mono green deck is that, when you're playing against Esper with an aggressive deck, you're kind of cold to whatever 4-mana card they play. Take mono red, for example. Verdict or Jace is a nightmare for them. Whereas in this situation, and I think for this deck in general, you don't care about Jace a ton. It kind of plays the role of a Fog, but we're playing 4 mana for a Fog, so that doesn't really matter. And so what he's able to do now is he's able to come in with the Brush Strider and the Boon Satyr, deal 5 to that, come across for 1 with the Militant because of the Jace trigger, and it's like, okay, nice Jace. Take care of that, play a Mutavault, pass the turn back. I'm in a great situation.
Yeah, pressure's back on Joe. That Boon Satyr was really helpful for Robert. Joe was hoping to have the Jace go down to 2 on that attack there, and then -2 the Jace to find an answer, but now he's out of card draw, and taking a lot of damage each turn. Right now it's 9 power on the board for Richard.
Hey, he picked up an Intention Sphere for the turn. He can play that, extort, and then have Mutavault back to block if he would like. His draw was his draw was a Thoughtseize, which is not going to be useful for him at all right now, but he is going to play the D-Sphere. He's going to extort. He's going to go up to 14. Richard's going to go down to 21. I presume the D-Sphere is going to go over towards the Boon Satyr because that's the biggest creature, and that's what Joe actually taps on the table. But, he's in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, Joe opting not to cast the Thoughtseize because the most probable thing in Robert's hand is a land, based on how this game's played out. There are no cards in a mono green aggro deck that he couldn't have cast that turn. As it turns out, the Thoughtseize would have hit. The remaining card in Robert's hand is Slaughterhorn, but Joe doesn't know that and decides to go for the Mutavault instead.
So Richard's going to untap. He takes a draw. He's taking a look at Blind Obedience, make sure he knows what that does, which is nothing at this particular moment. So he fires up a Mutavault, and looks like he's ready to get in the red zone here. This attack would be for 7, which is half of Joe's life total. Of course, Brush Strider, it does have Vigilance, so it won't have to tap to attack, and we will get that straightened out for you guys. And there we do go. Lossett looks like he wants to block with the Mutavault. The question is, who do we block? It's probably Brush Strider, but I think you could make an argument for Mutavault.
I would think it's... Yeah, it could be either. I would think it's Mutavault, just because that's the card you have the most trouble dealing with. He's just going for maximum life points, however, and that would be taking care of Brush Strider.
You see Richard's hand. He does have that Slaughterhorn that you did mention. He picked up a copy of Ranger's Guile. There's one of those in his main deck, and it looks like none of them in his sideboard for this particular weekend. So he's going to actually use the Slaughterhorn, +3/+2 Blood Rush style, which means Brush Strider actually gets to win this combat.
Right. This block actually forced Robert to use the Slaughterhorn instead of the Ranger's Guile, which is pretty good for Joe because that means the one that could go to his face is only 1 point instead of 3.
Right now, Lossett is desperately looking for a Supreme Verdict because he's under the gun here. Even a card like Elspeth would be pretty nice, assuming that he does have a 6th land. Those are game winners against this mono green aggro deck, but it doesn't look like he has either of those right now. Yeah.
Esper with an okay matchup here. Like you said before, mono green has very few answers to a card like Elspeth. So all Joe needs to do is to survive to one of his finishers. Granted, that can sometimes be a pretty difficult task.
Just has to pass the turn back. Doesn't even play a land as Richard will take a draw. Looks like he drew another copy of Slaughterhorn. It's an attack for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It could be lethal this go around, and with Ranger's Guile as backup,
I would guess he'd go for it this turn because of the Ranger's Guile.
Be a little surprised if he didn't.
it would take 2 kill spells from Joe to not die on this turn.
And you see, it looks like he's moving in. I think he's just deciding which one do I want to target. And it looks like Dryden Militant is the choice. That's, I think, the weakest of the threats out there. So that is going to do it.
No Ranger's Guile needed.
Slaughterhorn, take it down. Mono green aggro from Robert Richard. 2-0, defeats Joe Lossett, and Esper Control picks up his first loss. But mono green aggro, you know, we talk about the hyper-aggressive decks in the format, and this round actually kind of displays both of those. You see Tom Ross win with his red-green aggro deck, and now Robert Richard with the very linear mono green aggro deck getting the job done.
Yeah, mono green aggro has been pretty decent so far in the format. I think what it preys on is these other aggressive decks like mono black aggro. Certainly decks like mono red even. It's going to be great against any of those just because its creatures are all bigger. And that said, it occupies about the same spot in the metagame as them. It's pretty, it's aggressive enough to be good against mono black sometimes. It has a game plan against Esper. It has game against mono blue. It doesn't have anything that really crushes it in the format.
Yeah, this was the talk of the tournament last week. And again, mono black Devotion did win the tournament in Milwaukee in the hands of Kevin Huang. But a lot of people were very interested in Mason Lang's deck, and how could you even consider playing a deck like this? Are you kidding me? Brush Strider and everything else that's in this deck. Have you lost your mind? But again, he won 9 rounds, and you could argue that, hey, if he's able to keep 7 on the play for game number 3 against Kevin Huang in the quarterfinals, maybe that tournament has a different result. Don't know, obviously. We know how it ended up playing out. But we saw exactly what happened in this matchup, which looks like it's pretty much in Richard's favor. As you mentioned, Brush Strider is a pretty bad card in a vacuum, but contextually, if you're playing against a deck that can't block it, it's 2 mana, 3 power, and it's a card that you can play off of Burning Tree Emissary. You have to like a lot of things about the card, even though it's very easy to make fun of.
Yeah, I mean,